he is very active in the space. Oh, thank you, Ben. Seb is also co-organizing a yearly conference in Belgium, the BrewCon conference. So he's had a significant contribution across the board. So I want to thank him for joining today.
All right, thank you, Aiden. Thank you for hosting our OWASP SAMM talk. It's good. It's noon for you, so I'm enjoying your lunch, I would say, or I'm entertaining you at lunch. Here it's evening, so I'll have to get used to it. I'll also from time to time do modeling trainings, and I'll be doing a training at Black Hat this weekend. But instead of coming over and sitting on a plane for 10 hours, I'll be doing it remotely during the evening. So I'm getting used to the time zone. But okay, I'll do a presentation. The main goal of the OWASP SAMM presentation is to explain what it is about. But what I really want you, if you see this live or if you see the recording, what I want you to do is really to try it out at your organization, at your team, for your product, and see how it works, what does not work, provide feedback to us, to the community. So for us to take that and to take your and use your input and feedback into the next iteration.
Great.
With that, let me see if screen sharing works.
Real quick. So let me run through these initial slides, and then we'll stop sharing screen and hand it over to you.
Yeah,
that sounds good.
That's totally fine. Go
awesome.
ahead.
Sounds great. Yeah. Just a quick intro. These are the current chapter board of directors for our OWASP LA chapter. So big thanks to everyone involved in kind of keeping these meetups going. And then a quick video on OWASP and what it's about for those of us that it's new for.
It's a nonprofit that stands for the Open Web Application Security Project. OWASP is a community of developers, technologists, and evangelists improving the security of software through tools and resources. OWASP has 100+ active projects, and new project applications are submitted weekly. Projects are open source and are built by our community of volunteers, people just like you. Community and networking. There are hundreds of local chapters worldwide and thousands of members. Meetings are free and open to everyone. They include training, talks, and networking opportunities. Education and training. OWASP hosts many events each year. They are a great way to improve your skills, build your professional network, and learn about new trends in the industry. One of the many ways you can get involved is to become a member. The membership benefits include discounts for events and trainings, your own OWASP email address and Google Workspace access, a vote in our OWASP Global Board elections. And recently, OWASP added a brand new member benefit, access to hands-on application security training through the OWASP Secure Flag Open Platform. Join us and become a member today.
Great. And then if you want to check out more of our meetups, here's some links to YouTube where you can see all of our pre-recorded previous meetups. We also, OWASP just celebrated its 20th anniversary. And you can come celebrate with a virtual online event September 24th. If there's any sponsors that are interested in sponsoring a meetup, you can reach out to us here, sponsorship@owasp.org. And then our August speaker coming up is going to be Wayne Haber from GitLab, and he'll be speaking on security transparency. So hope you join us there. And then, yeah, happy to give the share over to you here, Seba. And yeah, thank you again, and feel free to kick it off.
All right, thank you, Aiden. So let me see if screen sharing works. I'll be sharing my desktop. Let me see how that works. All right. If everything is fine, you should be seeing my screen.
That's good.
All right, let's go. Good. I have a couple of slides, also demo. I'll show you around throughout the website, the GitHub, and also demonstrate how the OWASP SAMM toolbox works. This session is also meant to be interactive, so if you have any questions in between, just I would say raise your hand, put it through in the messaging. Pretty sure that Aiden will shout out if I'm missing anything. So with that, let's kick this off. So Aiden, thank you for the explanation and the presentation. Indeed, so a little bit of background. I'm already in security for more than 20 years now, mainly software security. Currently CTO at Torian. We're mainly doing consulting in Belgium. Internationally, we're known for our threat modeling training. So you might know or recognize Torian from that. Recently, we've also invested in or participated in a company called Data Protection Institute, where we do all our training with. And then for OWASP, I've been involved with OWASP for more than 16, 17 years right now. Started the Belgian chapter in 2005, done all sorts of things within OWASP, but now mainly focusing on the SAMM project as a co-leader of the project. With that, let me explain a little bit what is SAMM. So SAMM is the Software Assurance Maturity Model project. It's one of the OWASP flagship projects. It's in essence, it's already around for 2007, 2008, when it was first donated as OpenSAMM by Pravir Chandra. And it's really the maturity model for software assurance that provides a really effective way for any organization to not only analyze your software security posture, but also to improve it and to measure that progress and to demonstrate that progress. And that's where it's really unique in its nature as a maturity model. Obviously, being within OWASP is a fully open source model for everyone free to use and to participate in. Now, why do we need something like that? As many of you are aware, it's software assurance does not come by itself. There's no on-off switch on a software when it comes to security. There's no magic dust that we can sprinkle over it to make it secure. We have to do the work, and by doing the work, we mean you have to add security activities or build in security activities as part of a secure development lifecycle. If we look at this, and this is this slide we've used for ages, it represents a software lifecycle, and a very simplified one. There's always going to be in any iteration or new software development a design phase, a build phase where you pull together code or write your code. Hopefully this all gets tested and the majority of your code lives in a production environment. And this might be DevOps, Agile, Waterfall, doesn't matter. You'll see or recognize these kind of phases in any software development. Now, I would say the most organizations want to test their software secure through pen testing and see how that can work. That's really a very reactive way in doing software security. The best way to actually have more assurance, to actually see, okay, am I doing the right things? Am I making a positive impact on my software security? Is to do more proactive things, such as providing training, doing source code reviews, dependency testing, checking out if you're meeting compliance requirements, doing threat modeling, and so on. So those are the more proactive activities, and there are lots of them. And there's all ways of doing this. You have Microsoft SDL, you have BSIM, you have any other. There's lots of ways to do that. With OWASP, we have the OWASP SAMM methodology to do just that, and to help you define and help you recognize which activities will actually help you in building more and more secure products and or software. So why do we use a maturity model? Because when it comes to adding or building in these activities in the way you work, it means for most organizations that you're changing actually the way you work. And changing is something that you don't do overnight. An organization changes and dev teams change slowly in changing their behavior. So we need something that is iterative in terms of like applying or building in these activities. It's also something that typically not everyone and every team develops differently. Every software company develops differently. What SAMM is about is really about a risk-based approach into adding these activities to your software lifecycle. So and in that sense, the OWASP SAMM framework, as I would like to call it, is also like a box of building blocks that you can add to your particular way of developing. Also, what we've also had as from the beginning that Praveer created OpenSAMM and donated it to OWASP, and now it's known as OWASP SAMM. It's actually a fork of OpenSAMM. Is it has to provide enough details and guidance for everyone to understand actually what they need to do, what the objective is of every activity in OWASP SAMM. And overall, it provides a way of measuring your activities and the outcome of your activities. And once you can measure something, you can also manage it. And that's actually the biggest benefit of using OWASP SAMM for your way of adding security to your development lifecycle. So the best way to actually discover SAMM is to go to our website. It's the latest version of the current project. I'm going to show you what the website is, but it's fairly easy. OWASPSAMM.org. Everyone should find it. The model is there, and I'll demonstrate later on what you can find on the website. Now, at its core, when I say the core, when you go to the model and on the website, you'll find the model there. At its core, OWASP SAMM is about 5 what we call business functions, and these business functions each of them contains 3 security practices. So you have the business function of governance, how do you organize all these activities? You have a business function around design, so typical design-related activities. You have the implementation business function, the verification, obviously, testing is obviously an important part, and the operations part of OWASP SAMM. And within each of these business functions, you have 3 security practices. And so I'm not going to see them here. They're all clearly marked out, and you can find them online. But if I'm going to explain, for instance, the governance one, you have 3 security practices. Typically, you start with setting out your strategy, and at its core, SAMM is about metrics, about measuring and improving. So you want to create and promote a secure development lifecycle initiative, program, and improvement, and you want to measure and improve your progress. That's the first security practice. The second security practice is about policy and standards. So why are we doing this? Are there any policy standards that we need to adhere to when we develop our software? And how do we manage that as a second stream? And a third pillar or security practice of governance is about education and guidance of the people and stakeholders involved. So you want to make sure that people understand why they're doing this. There's awareness, there's training, but also it's about organization and culture. So within, for instance, in this guidance part, you'll find AppSec champions, you find software security excellence, you find how do we start up a community. So there's a lot of things within the governance part that help you actually realize the other business functions. And so I'm not going to explain every security practice in here. There's lots of online content that you can refer to. There's also some trainings that you can participate in. But that's a little bit the structure of how OWASP SAMM really works and how the framework looks like. Now, within each of these security practices, I'm going to take one example actually. There is 3 levels of maturity. You'll have a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. Actually, there's 4, and you have a level 0. You're not doing anything. But a level 1 typically for a security practice is that you're doing this kind of security practice in an ad hoc way. Level 2 is you're starting to automate this, you're starting to get better at this security practice. This is a generic definition of the maturity levels. And at a level 3, you really can demonstrate that you're doing this security practice, and you have a feedback cycle into the security practice and as you're in your SDL program as a whole. Now, when we apply this on, for instance, the requirements testing, and the requirements testing is part of the verification business function. And the verification function, you have architecture assessment, requirements-driven testing, and security testing. So when I do one example, requirements testing, there's 2 streams in there. There's what I would call like a positive and a negative stream. The positive stream is you verify that you're building in security controls in your software. And at level 1, it's you're testing for standard security controls. Are we doing authentication, authorization, blah, blah, blah. And so there's a lot of standard tests that you can do there. That's the basic activity at the level 1. If you want to get better at it, and there is a logical order and a logical buildup in terms of doing this activity, when you go towards a level 2 in this, you're going to derive test cases from your security requirements. So you want to test actually in a positive way, am I meeting the requirements? Maybe these can be compliance requirements, maybe it can be functional security requirements. Am I doing this and have I implemented this in the correct way? When you want to go even further than that, and that is absolutely not, I would say, the overall goal of any program. So you have to find out what's good enough for you. But if you want to get better, and if you want to reach a level 3 in terms of maturity and control verification, you start to do regression testing. And so you want to automate this, and with every new deployment, with every new iteration, automatically you're going to retest this, and you have the assurance that every test is going to either provide you with an output that is positive, that it works, or raise an alarm or hits you with, okay, something went wrong here. That's the stream in terms of control verification. On the other side, you have a second stream, which is more like what I would call the negative test, the misuse, abuse testing, where at a level 1, you typically are going to do fuzzing. You're throwing anything at the application in an automatic way, seeing if it results in any crash or anything going wrong. That's a basic level of testing. Level 2, you're going to look at how the software works. And here you see that the level 2 is typically you're going to tailor it towards your software stack or your functionality. You're going to create abuse cases. You're going to see how can we abuse this? How can we abuse the business logic? How can we circumvent certain login? How can we do, for instance, add stuff to the shopping cart without us having to pay for it? These are typical examples, and you test those. And level 3 would be denial of service or stress testing your software stack. You see, there's a growing level of functionality of doing more and more in terms of testing. And this is only one of the 15 security practices in SAMM. Now, I want to reiterate. Typically, it's not your goal to have like a level 3 in every security practice. And you'll have a certain level when you start, and then you'll have to look, okay, what is good enough for my software? And this will be different if you're a financial organization, if you're in energy sector, if you're an e-commerce, or so it will depend really on what kind of business you're in, what kind of compliance requirements you have to meet. So, but that's the structure of how security practices work. So how do you do this? How do you typically start this? Typically, we'll start with an assessment of where you are. And there's a toolbox as an OWASP TAM that was originally there also from the first version, and we've kept it up to date. And it uses a software that most organizations use and possibly also hate, called Excel, and Worlds just runs on it. And we're also, just to be assured, rest assured, we also have like online, like single page applications where you can do the same thing. But if you're used to using Excel, there's also a Google spreadsheet version. That's the toolbox. Now I'm going to show you how it works. But that's actually, it provides you with the levels per security practice and with specific questions. And the setup of the questions are 2 ways. You have the main question, which is typically focused on more like a quantitative approach. Are you doing a certain activity, and for how much, or for how many applications, for all your developers or a subset of your developers? So it's based on quantity. And there's, under each of these questions, there's also like a qualitative criteria. So in this example, we're going to have like an assessment on strategy and metrics. First level question is, as an organization, have you an idea of what kind of risks that you're going to cover, that have to cover in terms of application development? If that's a yes, then you're at level 1. But there's a whole lot of qualitative criteria for that. You have to have an idea of the risk appetite. You have to these kind of risks have to be vetted. You don't have to like invent these yourself. It has to be based on what your business actually going to do. There has to be some kind of like documented or risks, and stakeholders need to know where these are. If these are all true, these are qualitative criteria, then you're very sure that when you answer these questions, that you're at a level 1. And that is something that we've added in SAMM version 2, is that it's not only about quantity, but also about qualitative criteria in terms of measuring where you are. And that's a level 1. Level 2 is if you have a strategic plan. Level 3 is you regularly review, update your strategic plan. So and if you answer these questions, you'll get more and more maturity points. I'm going to demonstrate that later on. But that's how an assessment actually works. Now, what do you get out of this? What do you get out of SAMM, or how can you use SAMM? Typically, you can use it to either do like what we would call a gap analysis. You measure where you are, and you have also a certain target where you want or where you need to be in terms of like compliance or certain ambition in terms of, okay, we need to be at the level 2 in terms of strategy and metrics, but we are at 1.5. Or we are at security architecture is not that important for us, but we don't do a little bit more than where we are right now, and that's a gap analysis. The interesting thing about SAMM is that you can also build your own roadmaps. And typically, when I said before, it's about iterations, and the SAMM toolbox and SAMM itself as a model provides you a way of building your own roadmap of where you are right now, in iterations of about a couple of weeks or a couple of months to get where you want to go, and to actually measure that and to demonstrate that to your management, to your customers, to your stakeholders. And that's typically where SAMM is very good at. And we've seen that also a lot where when it comes to, for instance, when you ask suppliers to provide you with some kind of assurance, that I've seen customers or organizations or governments even asking their suppliers to provide their, what I would call like SAMM profile, or where are you in terms of SAMM maturity when you create or develop software for us as a customer. So that's what you get out of SAMM. But together with that, as each of these activities underpinning the security practice is very prescriptive, you get a lot of guidance on how to do that actually. So let me skip or break out of the presentation. Let's go to the model itself and see how that looks like. So we have the so when you go to the website, you come obviously to this homepage, and there's a menu at the top, where you can discover the model, where you have specific guidance, where you have a couple of community-driven pages, and also your latest user day information. So that's how this works here. And then on the start page, there's getting started. So if you're completely new to SAMM, you don't know anything, getting started is where you want to go. That's the first page. And the getting started is will walk you through what it is, how to apply it. There's also like a quick start guide with how to prepare, how to assess, how to set your target, how to define your plan, and so on. That's how it works. The second thing that you're going to do is typically how you're going to do an assessment. And if you want to do this, you can do this yourself. You can also ask your security group to help you with that. There's also lots of organizations and consulting companies here that can help you with that. There's also all local OWASP groups that can help you with that. But the self-assessment is typically where you start at, and the toolbox would be one of them. But there are also online tools to actually use. There is an online calculator here. There's also a couple of other. I'm not sure if this one is still active. Let me see. Yes, actually it is. So there's online calculator that you can use. That's one of the sponsors that has created that. Actually, pretty soon there will be a fully developed OWASP toolbox that you can use to do that in a single page application, which will come online in the next couple of months. But that's to measure where you are. I'm going to demonstrate that in a couple of minutes. And then the next step is, okay, that's all fine and well. And typically, either you're going to set your own target and to work towards that. But the question we get the most is, okay, that's all fine and well, but how do we compare to others that are comparable with us? And that's the benchmarking part. And the benchmarking part is an initiative that is already active for a couple of years, actually for over 5 years now, where we are actually capturing some assessment data and building up like a critical mass of some measurements, and where I hope quite soon we'll be able to release the basic baseline data set of benchmark some information, where you will be able to compare yourself with your peers or the overall data set that OWASP SAMM benchmark has. And Brian Glass is actually leading that particular track within the project, and I'll have a little bit more information in the presentation later on. If you're sitting on a couple of OWASP SAMM assessments yourself, and you have the possibility to share that in an anonymous way, and then please feel free to reach out to Brian. He will happily include that in the first release of the benchmark data. You also will be getting a unique identifier for yourself, for your own data set, so that you can update that or remove that if you really want to do that. But that will be the only link to your data set in the benchmark. So that is, I would say, the first steps. Besides that, there's a lot of other stuff in there. There's blog and post, or later, if you want to get up to date about the latest stuff, subscribe to the newsletter. There's our sponsors. The model I'll show you right here. The model itself is like I just explained to you in the presentation. You'll, for instance, see here strategy and metrics, where we have the same overview, the maturity level. So the main objective of strategy metrics about stream A, create and promote, where you have a maturity level 1, or how to start up a security program, maturity level 2, how to create your roadmap, and level 3, how to review that on a regular basis. So, and you can jump around throughout the different business functions and the model and the security practices, and you'll have a description of the activity itself. And also under that, for instance, if you go to the requirements-driven testing and you go to control verification for the first one, security controls, you also have quality criteria, the main question and answers on how to actually respond to those. And that is a model. There's also a whole, I would say, explanation around that. And that's the core about OWASP SAMM, and that's the best way to actually use and understand them all. In terms of guidance, there's the getting assessment agile, and the benchmarking. There's also already an agile guidance. The core itself is what we would call methodology and technology agnostic, in a way that it's applicable to any way of development and any technology stack. If you're into agile, and hopefully we'll also have a DevOps version in the next couple of months or maybe next year, then there's specific guidance on that, which kind of activities are really important, how to do that. And that was actually developed by people within the community, Rob van der Veer from the Netherlands, and that there's also a couple of presentations around that on actually how to use SAMM for agile development. Community blogs I've shown you. We have events. So if you and hope we'll probably have this event if it's recorded in here as well. Then you can look back to previous presentations. We have the sponsors page. We have an FAQ with all kinds of like basic questions, and then also about contributing. So if you want to contribute, everyone is free to actually help us. If you want to provide a testimonial, to help benchmarking, there's GitHub issues that you can add. So if you want to or need to fix stuff and so on, so everything is in here. So, and then the latest thing is the user day. Last year we had the first user day. It was an online event. This year we also have the first spring user day. We'll have a fall spring user day as well, or an autumn one, where we have different topics that are covered by the community, which you can download the presentation or even look at them online. So that's it in terms of the website. Best way to also discover how it works. Now, when it comes to using the toolbox, so the toolbox, actually, when you go here to the SAMM assessment, there's a toolbox spreadsheet. Actually, this brings you to our GitHub. I'll explain the GitHub a little bit later on. And there you can download the spreadsheet. So let me just switch to that particular spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet, there's an interview tab with the different practices and questions. There's a scorecard with the outcome. You can also create your own roadmap, and there's a roadmap chart that is created out of that. So I'm going to just take one example. Let me, for instance, start with education and guidance. This is typically one of the security practices that organizations start with. And it's focused around making sure that people who are involved in development understand what it is about. And so level one is typically, okay, we need to make sure that developers understand what software security is about. And if you go to the model, you would typically also see that here. Education and guidance, security stream A, training and awareness. So the idea here is really to have awareness training, but not just awareness training like a generic one. The best is that you really make sure that it's aligned on what your developers are working on. And it doesn't make sense to have its Java secure programming training when your developers are developing in .NET or anything else. So make sure it's aligned. So those are the quality criteria. Is it repeatable? Is it consistent, and so on? And here you have the answer to that question. Nobody is required to do this. Some of them, at least half of them, or most of them. So if I fill this in, let me go back. If it's no, this rating will be a 0. If this is a yes, some of them, you see it goes up. So actually what it is, so within the spreadsheet, there's a whole set of formulas that calculates the maturity of that particular security practice. So next one, it is rating customized for individual roles, such as developer, testers, or security champions. Typically, this links to maturity level 2, where you have role-based training. So it's not only about your developers, it's also about your testers, your product managers, your architects. They have to understand what their role is in security development. So there has to be some kind of role. So let's say that some of them have training, most of them have not. See, the score goes up a little bit. And do you have like, and this is then already like a third maturity level activity. Do you have like a learning management system or something equivalent that actually tracks that? So you might not have this. So if you would have that, then typically your score will go up, but let's say you don't have that. So that's it for awareness and so for education. And then there's a cultural part of it, or organization part. We have security champions involved, and that might be something that you already have for each of the development teams. So let's say most, or at least half of the teams have this. You have a central person or an organization that supports software development. Well, okay, you might have started this. And is there a centralized portal where everybody can find this actually back? That might be Confluence or whatever. And maybe you don't, or maybe you have. So let's say we don't. So here you see we are at 0.75. So we're nearly at the maturity level 1, but just answering these questions. So it's quite simple, it's straightforward. And if you then look at the scorecard, you'll see that actually this kind of like is going to be replicated throughout the spreadsheet. Now, this is the first part. This is assessment. That's actually the easiest part. Typically, you will do this based on your scope. But typically, you'll do this on a team level. The second part is, okay, let's imagine that we want to have or need to have a higher level of maturity for education and guidance. And we're going to add iterations of improvement to that. So, and then the roadmap building comes into place. And that's where we have this roadmap building spreadsheet, a worksheet. And so we have here our initial answers as a baseline. And then we have 4 phases to actually improve this. So let's say that you actually need to have like a level 2. And that most of our people need to be trained. At least half of them have to have role-based training, and there has to be an LMS with for everyone. Everybody has, at least half of the teams need to have, well, let's say all the teams need to have security champions. And for a part of the organization, we need to have a software security center. So let's say our target maturity level is 2, and we're starting at 0.75. And we'll have about 4 phases to actually get there. And then it's easy. So you're going to say, okay, let's make sure that we're going to improve, make sure that maybe by the second phase, all of our developers have had training. And that we're also going to start at least half here. And then for the LMS, we're going to start that up for a very basic system at the beginning of the first iteration. And we're going to conclude that for the 3rd iteration for everyone. And in that way, you can actually build or see and create actually between 0.75, then you increase that. So let's say that you're going to add security champions by the end of the 3rd phase, and that we're going to also have this here. So in your balancing out actually the improvement or adding these activities in each of the phases between the baseline and the 1st phase, the 2nd phase, the 3rd phase, and the 4th phase, and then you're actually here at the level 2. So in that way, you can, in an interactive way, create your own roadmap. And actually, when you then also go to the chart, you'll see your start position, and you'll see it increasing and going up towards your target maturity level. And that's actually how the spreadsheet and the toolbox can help you to create your own roadmaps. And that's a one-time activity. Obviously, when you're starting and doing these iterations, you're going to go back and see, okay, did we do that? Did we achieve our objectives? And then you can adjust and refine your roadmap. But that's actually how the toolbox in itself can support you in doing assessments, creating roadmaps, also demonstrating that with these kind of graphics. So that is how it actually works. I hope that is clear. Any questions on that? If you have any questions afterwards, don't hesitate to shoot out an email or to hit us up on Slack if you've seen this and it's not clear. I'll explain to you later on how you do that. So besides the website, I also want to share or demonstrate to you that we also have a GitHub. And actually, we have, since about a couple of months, we have our own OWASP SAMM organization on GitHub. Prior to that, we were a repository in the OWASP organization, but we now have created our OWASP SAMM organization on GitHub. The main reason for that is we needed to have different repositories and very easily, I would say, make links and organize our different sub-projects in our organization. But actually, when you look at this, and this is our OWASP SAMM organization, the core model you can find here, and the core model is actually, it's a set of YAML files, where you have, for instance, the business functions that are with the explanation and the different maturity levels that are explained, and so on, the practice levels, the security practices themselves that are fully available in YAML. And actually, how this works is every time when we do, or when we would do a specific change in here, automatically there is an activity that will be triggered and that will convert these YAML files to HTML and will be pushed towards the latest version of the website. So there's automatically Hugo-based generation of the website. So what you're looking at here is a Hugo-based generation. Obviously, you also have the website itself. So if we go to the, and that's where we had, that's one of the reasons we have now able to split it off. So we have the website, we have the core, we have the toolbox, we have a PDF generation, we have an app actually that was created by somebody in India that provides you with a dashboard. Very recently, we have SAMM2, which is a next, so it's a next JavaScript-based single-page application where you can do this. That team has also created a YAML to JavaScript conversion, and they're also adding translations. Now the translations are still currently living on the old repo, but we're now in the process of transferring them to the new OWASP SAMM organization. And so that's actually how you see how that works. So if you look at, for instance, the website in terms of content, you see there's also already 2 placeholders for English and Spanish. And then here, for instance, the assessment, you'll actually see the same text that you're going to see on the website. So that's pretty easy, and everything in there, once we change something, is being pushed to the website. All right. So with that, let me conclude. So now you've seen what SAMM works, how you can find information about SAMM, the model. You've seen how you can use some of the tools to actually build your own program. There's a recap of the quick start guide. You have to set your scope, what they're going to do. Typically, you'll start with a couple of 1 or 2 pilot groups. You do an assessment, you set your target, you define your plan, implement it. Typically, you're going to use other OWASP projects to help you implement those. We're adding mappings to any of the security practices to other OWASP projects. They're not visible yet, but they're going to be visible in one of our next iterations. And then you roll it out, you set it out, you test it out, and you iterate. You see that you're actually getting where you want to go. I've also explained that, and that's also one of the reasons why we've now been able to iterate over new versions. And it was one of the, I would say, the biggest things we needed to solve when we created SAMM version 2.0, because it's community driven. A lot of people were working on it together. Before, I would say version 2, we had one monolithic PDF document that was pushed out. Now, that was not really scalable. So what we've done is we've broken down everything into small bits, YAML files, and we push everything towards a generated website, a PDF, a toolbox. Actually, the spreadsheet I've shown you is created automatically based on the YAML files. And also the YAML files, which are at the core of the model, can also be consumed by any application that's able to consume YAML or JSON, or also later on, we're going to make that available through an API interface. And now every time when we change something, we are pushing a new version, and then we'll have a 2.01, 2.02 every time when something is updated. So that's we've created our own CI/CD pipeline, and that has enabled us to collaborate with a lot of people together on that particular project. Because we've not done this ourselves alone with a couple of people, this is the work of tens or hundreds of people that have provided us with input and feedback. So at its core, the business functions, the practices, streams, we drive that with the core project, actually also the evaluation model, the activities, but we've used community feedback to improve that and also provide us with input for the current version. And anything else in terms of like supporting information, like the guidance, like the agile guidance, like references we're going to add, supporting tools. There's lots of people that have donated already from stuff to our project. And there's also a lot of organizations that are actually currently building on tools that are going to make it easier for you and for us to use some even more. So more on that in the near future. So as I explained, it's with some we've converted some towards what we would call like a suite of different repos and functionalities in the new GitHub organizations, like I demonstrated. We've also added localization and translation. So people are actually working on translating SAMM to a lot of different languages, including Spanish, but a lot of others as well. And the way, and if you're interested in joining that, if we're adding a language or helping out with any of the other languages, we're using the Crowdin platform, and it's quite easy. So if you have a couple of hours to donate, it's quite easy to use that interface to actually just translate or do quality assurance on some of the translations. So that would be perfect. That would be perfect if you would help us out with that. And it's now also it's going to be automatically translated to also an online version. So you have a drop down in terms of languages on the website when one of the languages is completely translated. Obviously, we'll also have the toolbox translated, and any other tool that is going to be able to use, or different languages can also then use the other languages in their tooling. So that's translations. And then also something I wanted to provide is in terms of updates and something that's going on. As of this year, within OWASP, we're working more and more with grants. So this is typically paid for activities on projects. And we have a grant, we've received a grant from Motorola Solutions. Actually, they came to us like, okay, we want to have a training, and not like training for a couple of people, but training like for 6,000 people. So they were more interested like in a train the trainer class. And that was perfect because we already had some kind of like some training, which we've delivered ourselves. But this was a perfect opportunity to improve our materials, to improve a trainer manual, to improve the handouts and notes, to create an actual set and package of a train the trainer. So we actually have a couple of people in the core team that are being paid to do that, and they're going to test drive that like with one class to Motorola Solutions, and to see, okay, how does that work? And we're going to use that feedback to improve the content. And then afterwards, the content of that trainer stuff is going to be made completely available on our website and on the GitHub repo. So if you want to scale this up, if you want to have more people, or if you have a very big organization that you need to train, this will be something of interest for you. Then the benchmark initiative, I already explained a little bit. Main question is, okay, how do we compare to each other? Now, Brian is pushing that track within the project, but can use any help in terms of like architecture development, but also obviously benchmark inputs, helping out also with testing out the API and the specs for that API. We have already a full data model. We have a very good idea how it's going to work. It's now a question of of pushing it through and having the first probably API set to test it out for the tooling that's already out there. So this brings us to the current roadmap. So at this stage, we're continuously fixing minor stuff. So if you see anything that doesn't make sense, or if any questions, hit us up. Best thing is to create a GitHub issue. So through that, we track that and we fix the model, and we do that through pull request. So the best thing is, even if you can fix it through pull request, that's even better. The PDF generation is not completely finished, so we're wrapping that up. So hopefully that will be finished in the next couple of weeks or months. So, and in version 2.1, which is the ongoing version, we're finalizing the whole translation setup, the mappings, for instance, adding the OWASP projects, also mapping to other standards, all the mapping, for instance, to BSIM, mapping activities to guidelines that are out there is something that is of interest. And then this fall, we're going to focus on publishing SAMM2, which is actually going to be the tool, the online tool that you can use, the YAML to JavaScript, and adding more specific guidance. And then later on, we're going to focus on open, like an online toolbox driven by the project. And also have an open API, not only for the benchmark, hopefully we'll have that, but also for the data set and the translated aspects of the data set. And then next iteration for version 3, it's really up to you and up to the community to provide input feedback on how can we actually make this better or improve that. So we'll be capturing any inputs in terms of improvements, fixes, and I'm going to have that, build that together in terms of version 3. So the best thing that you can do if you're new to this, try it out. The proof of the pudding is actually eating it, and try it out. Let us know how this works. If you're happy with it, provide us with a testimonial. If you're, for one reason or another, you see, okay, this does not work, let us also know, and then we can see how we can help you, and also how we can improve that, and how we can improve the project. So that's it. I have also a lot of links, a lot of stuff to get involved. We have the website, we have a Twitter account, we have a YouTube account where you can see all our previous recordings of user days last year, this year, presentations, and so on. If you want to keep up to date, we have a newsletter. There's a little spam there. We just push out updates on the project. There's a LinkedIn group. Best way also to interact with it is through the OWASP Slack workspace. If you're not on there, just use this invitation link and join the Project SAMM Slack channel. We have the GitHub organization, and we also have the project page on the OWASP website. We do have monthly community calls every second Wednesday of the month, actually also around this time frame. It's 9:30 Central European time, which is about noon on the Pacific time zone. And every fourth Wednesday of the month, we also have a core team call. So that's where actually discuss the core together with the core team, actual work on the project. You're also more than welcome to join us there, but be aware that we're going to work on the next iterations. Like I said at the beginning, it's not something I do alone. There's lots of other people involved. I have to thank Bart, who is also project co-leader for the project. Incidentally, also from Belgium. So we must be doing something good there, but that's actually a coincidence. But then there's people from all over the world that have helped us, and there's 3 dots at the bottom because there are a lot of people that are not on here, but you know who you are, and we are very thankful for your input and feedback. Also want to specifically shout out to our sponsors. We do have a sponsor scheme to help to donate actual money or cycles to the project, specifically also with the grants now. That is really useful because it will help us accelerate the program as such. So if you think that SAMM is useful for your organization and convince your boss, or you have a budget to donate or to accelerate the project, you're more than welcome to actually get in touch with us, and we'll also recognize you as a sponsor for that. So individually, but also as an organization, it's really key to help us improve software. Software powers the world, but obviously insecure software is a bad thing. So we want to make sure that gets better. So with that, I'm at the end of my presentation. Any questions or feedback?
Any questions? Not seeing any in the chat. Got it. Looks like no questions. Well, big thank you again, Seba, for joining us. Yeah, I know it's getting a little late over there, so thanks.
No problem. It's not that late. It's just 10 o'clock in the evening.
Got it. Yeah, sounds good. You know, personally, I saw the framework probably a year and a half ago, so it's very cool to see where it's come now. And you were, I think, at the time speaking about automating all of the components of actually updating the site, so that came to fruition too. Very valuable project. So thank you there as well.
Thank you. Also, if you have any questions later on, or if you're looking at this recording, we also have the same thing in Belgium. We also have virtual meetings, so people tend to look at the recordings later on. Feel free to contact us on Slack or through our mailbox. Yep.
And we will post this recording as well on our YouTube, and we'll tweet it out there. So be sure to follow and can review it then.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Thanks everybody, and hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye. Enjoy your day. Take care.